I remember the weekend of the Diablo 4 open beta, talking to some friends and saying, man, Diablo is coming at the perfect time. I am so ready to get into this. At a time where I'm feeling more apathetic about Destiny 2 than I ever have before, and at that point bouncing between games. So, when Diablo 4 launched in an extremely impressive technical state with a gargantuan amount of content to burn through, I thought, ooh, here we go. This might be just what the doctor ordered. But 2 months after launch, I actually made the decision to uninstall the game for the time being. I'm not one to be negative for the sake of being negative, or drive fake outrage. It's more a matter of, I'm quite surprised by that. So, to be clear, Diablo 4 is a really great video game. Technically, it runs exceptionally well. It has incredibly crafted environments, dungeons and bosses, and really interesting loot. Not to mention the absolute abundance of content for the player to dig through on day one, which is extremely impressive when we've seen just how shaky, buggy and content light these games can launch. It doesn't feel like they held anything back so that it could be repackaged to us later on. On paper, this game, it should speak to me, and it does. Well, it did. See, I rolled credits on the campaign, did some World Tier 3 stuff, and then that was enough for me. It wasn't that I wasn't having fun, but just the campaign alone and the premise of what its seasons were going to be was enough to put me off wanting to invest a lot of time into the game beyond that. Which, again, was surprising, given that I was almost ready to get into a new live service model outside of Destiny 2. So, what was it that put me off? Well, first of all, I think its seasonal model is going to divide its players. For those who play Destiny or other PvE based games, its seasons aren't narrative focused first, they're sandboxed, and your character becomes essentially useless once a new season starts because you roll what they call seasonal characters, and your old characters are sent to the Eternal Realm. Like I say, a split. See, what I want in these kind of games is an ongoing narrative, and even if that is not necessarily a strong focus, at least it's my character still going through each season. Well, I get the premise for Diablo has been this since Diablo 3, and it's about creating a new experience for the player to go through each season, but it just doesn't quite do it for me. Adding on to the narrative element, Season 1's narrative was just to introduce you to some seasonal mechanics, its malignant hearts, and so forth. Diablo's story for each season has been stated to not be connected to its main plot with Lilith and everything that follows after that, therefore leaving the expansions to continue that story, which is where I foresee myself coming back. Again, totally fine. This is what Diablo has been and will continue to do so. It's just not for me. I don't like the idea of spending tens of hours on a character only for it to be constantly resetting, especially when I still don't think Blizzard have got the right pacing on its leveling and XP, although I do hear that it's better now. There's a second part to the last statement, which is, I can invest all the time into speccing and a certain build, or build into a certain loot, only for Blizzard to do what they did right before Season 1 and nerf almost everything into the ground, making all that time spent redundant. These games of course need to have some level of balance, sure, but you're meant to feel overpowered, meant to have some form of a power fantasy. There's this content nerfing, and it's not just Blizzard that do it. That kind of concept takes me away as a player, because if there's no ongoing narrative, no ongoing character, everything you put in for 3 months at a time is eventually made redundant. Diablo 4 is basically your only video game that you will play, and that is just not for me, especially in a year of video games this good. I mentioned I feel a little apathetic about Destiny, but that game has a balance because the work you put in, the loot you gather, the story you progress, the character you level, it stays. And when you want to play casually but still experience what a season has to offer, you can. Going back to that power fantasy a moment, one of the worst things that I did not enjoy about Diablo is its constant level scaling. You never overscale for an enemy or an area, they're constantly brought up to what you are. I've never really liked this mechanic in these kind of games. In PvE games, I like enemies being fodder, and then others who feel more of a challenge, but there is a distinction of who is who. Like, it's a different genre, but Elden Ring, There are areas where you should really not touch early on, but you can, you have the choice. It'll just be a hell of a lot harder for you. It's then rewarding to go back there with fresh loot, higher stats and levels, and just decimate them. I love that in a game, and in particular one with loot, because you feel like you're being rewarded for the time and effort that you put in. Random cannon fodder enemies in Diablo never feel distinct, or specific biomes don't stand out because yes, environmentally they're different, but that on its own doesn't make them memorable. It would have been really cool in its seasons if certain areas became infected or something narratively, which then meant that enemies that were once difficult to take down were now the new big bad. I don't enjoy constantly leveling up a character only to feel the benefits in just abilities and not how I dispose of my enemies. That kind of enemy scaling I've always found uninteresting as a design choice for this kind of game. I actually think from a sandbox point of view, its seasons have huge potential. Seeing some of these malignant bonuses and thinking about how much fun they would have been on my Necromancer is really cool, and this is just the start. I think for fans it will really click and open up season to season, but I just struggle personally because you might give me new mechanics, new ways to play, but it's still the same content, the same areas to explore, the same dungeons, same enemies, and the thought of rerunning its terrible side quests is more than enough to put me off. In fairness to Blizzard, this is just Season 1, and the fact that its season models always require rolling a new character means it is super easy just to jump back in when you want, which is terrific, but at the same time, video games just keep releasing and there's always something fresh and exciting to be dropping into most of the time, which then means that when you drop out of something, it's harder to get back. I can't see myself having a Diablo season that makes me want to jump back in, but just an expansion. I have one more concern. Its microtransaction system. At launch, honestly, really good offerings in terms of what you could unlock as a player with just within the game and transmog for free. Add colorways, genuinely impressive stuff. Yet, what I've seen in Season 1, all the good shit now is locked behind that store. That store is so aggressively and, to be honest with you, disgustingly priced. We're talking one armor set costing more than 90% of indie video games out there in a full price video game, not free to play. I worry that given Blizzard's track record and everything that happened with Diablo Immortal, just where that road may lead to. We lost the microtransaction war as consumers a long time ago, but these are some of the most abhorrently priced microtransactions I've seen for a full price video game, not to mention the whole fiasco of where that Battle Pass icon was placed. I think there's suitably cause for concern on that front. It's not all negative though. The community numbers still look good, and they've had to say sorry with the tails between the legs after that awful patch a few weeks ago, but I still think going forward, Diablo 4 is in an incredible looking position for its players. I think it has to be noted just what a strong launch it had in its initial offerings. The campaign was truly excellent, between its voice cast, set piece moments, bosses, encounters, variety of dungeons, and of course those big budget cutscenes that blew the roof off. I think if you're on the Diablo 4 train, you're in for a ride. That might have a few bumps, but ultimately it's going to be first class. It just didn't do it for me, and that surprises me, and I don't think it will going forward. Diablo 4 is an excellent game, it's just not the live service that I was after. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button, it helps me out massively, and of course I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments whether you're still on that Diablo 4 train. Truth is, I just love talking video games, so if you want more of that, hit the subscribe button. Have a terrific day, and I'll catch you in the next one.